Hello, I hope you are doing great. Today we are going to talk about a small, simple best practice that Blazor components developers should be using. It will be a really small talk. However, before we continue, please remember to visit fairplaytube.pticostarica.com. Click on the Buy Me a Coffee icon and select a donation of your preference. This will help us keep the videos and products free for you. Okay, so let's start. So let's say that you are developing any kind of Blazor application and that for some reason you are using someone else's components, right? So this stack video is actually a component we developed for Fairplay 2, right? When you develop components, you will usually have a lot of parameters, that one or more parameters that you will be using to make a specific behavior for that component, right? Or so that it changes in some way depending on what you pass, right? For example, this video element, it has like a couple of parameters to allow deletion of the video, to allow downloading of the video, or to allow edit, right? So you can pass true or false in that. In this case, the name is actually very um, straightforward and it's not really difficult to understand it, right? But in other cases, you really have no idea what those parameters do, right? So one small tip that we should do is actually allow the developer or give more documentation to the developers on how those are being used and what's their purpose, right? Now, you can have a website like a GitHub wiki or something for your components, right? And have the documentation in there. However, that will actually cause the developers to go to your website. I guess if you are using that as a marketing technique, that will not be a problem for you. However, you are actually making the developers' life a little bit slower because they will have to go to the product documentation, figure out how it works, and then go back to Visual Studio. So you are actually killing a little bit of their performance, right, or their development speed. Now, one thing that you can do is you can go to your components. And for example, I was talking about the video component, right? And we had a couple of parameters. So allow edit, allow delete, and allow download. You can add the XML or this documentation, right? And you can put some documentation in there. When true, component will show the actions to allow edit, to allow this case delete, and in this case download. And now if you go, for example, to your index page, or no, sorry, to the video list in this case where I was, and you try to add this, you will see that allow download already has the documentation. When true, component will show the actions to download. Allow edit, when true, component will show the actions to allow edit. Allow delete, I don't know why it didn't do it, so let's see. Allow delete. I don't think it's because of this. Probably it hadn't really compiled it when I put it. Okay, now we have it in there. So when through component will show the actions to allow delete, right? And you can add examples or anything else that you may want to add in there. So let's see, for example, in the case of the feature view. So I can go in here and I can say content to be rendered when feature type is enabled, and this feature type is actually making reference to this property. Content to be rendered when feature type is enabled. And in this case, I have that use in the video jobs page. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we have it in here, feature view. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't show in here. I thought it will show, but it doesn't show in like the render fragments. Remember that they are um, the render fragments are basically sub elements, right? But for some reason they do not have that documentation in there, right? So, but you can still look in here. You know that if they are rendered fragments, you will using them as part of the body of the element. You are using this, right? At least that's the most common way. And here you can actually see documentation. Content to be rendered when feature view.feature type is enabled. Content to be rendered when, okay, actually is disabled, right? And yeah, in this case, feature, now it says content to be rendered when feature view.feature type is disabled for the disabled one, and content to be rendered when feature view feature type is enabled. And in the case of the other property, you could go and in this case put something like feature to be validated. Feature to be validated, and that's there, right? So let's see something I haven't done before. Let's see if the remarks are actually shown in there or the examples. Hmm. Feature view, feature view. Feature enable. I haven't done this one, so I don't know if it will be shown, but if that works, that will actually give your users a really better idea. Where did I put it actually? I put it in the feature enable, right? So it didn't show that part. Let's see if the remarks are actually shown. Video jobs. And no, it seems the remarks didn't show, but at least you can put the the small documentation in there, and actually you may actually be able to place this in there. Though it may look awful if you do that. Yeah, that's in there. It doesn't really look too good, but um, it shows a little bit how this can be used, right? So remember, one of the things that you can do actually is add the XML-based documentation, right, in your uh, in your properties, right? You add like the documentation with the three slashes, right? And you put some documentation in there explaining a little bit what's the purpose of that property, and then that will show up in the IntelliSense for each of the properties where you actually place that. So this is a really good practice that I believe most Blazor component developers, including me, should start using more, because let's be honest, I have seen, a lot of us have seen a lot of components in there that we are trying to figure out how they work, and we really have no idea what the properties do. And we need to either go and look for the source code if that component source code is available. I know I have made a lot of components myself without this documentation, and sometimes I can't even remember why I added a property in one of my own components, right? So that actually helps a lot too in those cases. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of components out there that we need to figure out how they work. But by adding this small technique, which is actually a default technique that has been available in Visual Studio for years, right? Adding the documentation for the properties and the classes, right? The only difference now is that um, we are using Blazor, but um, it's nothing that new. It's just something that is not really that used a lot. But yeah, please let us know what you think and have a great day. Also, remember, visit fairplaytube.bticostarica.com, click the Buy Me a Coffee icon, select a donation of your preference, and this will allow us to keep the videos and products free for you. Have a great day. And remember to also share the videos and watch the YouTube channel.